Hey YouTubers, I wanted to talk a little bit about the 404.5, and I was going to start this video by unboxing the lens, but we know what boxes look like, so let's skip past that. I will say when I got the box open, I was initially a bit disappointed. Now, the 200 to 400 F4 comes with a very sturdy travel case. The 500mm 5.6 lens comes with a nice little case. It's called a CL-M5. We'll get to why you might want to know that in a moment. The 800-6.3 comes with a very nice case. It's got a rigid bottom on it. You can fit the lens inside the case with the teleconverter attached. You've got side pockets here with zippers and a sling strap on the back. In my opinion, the best case Nikon's made to date. So when the 404.5 came out, why did they decide that all you needed was a sock? I really wish they'd put a good case in there with the 404.5 since I like to use the cases. Now, I checked, and the CL-M5 case that normally comes with the 500mm PF will hold the 404.5 lens. So if you've got a 500 PF like I do and you're planning to sell it, you might want to hang on to your case to use with your 404.5. Okay, I've lined the lenses up here to give you a different idea of the sizes of them. From left to right, we've got the 800mm 6.3 S, the 70 to 200 2.8 S, the 400 4.5 S, the 500 5.6 PF AFS with FTZ adapter, and the 200 to 400 F4 AFS with FTZ adapter. I put these lenses on a scale and the results were rather interesting to me. Coming in the heaviest on the far right, the 200 to 400 F4 with an FTZ adapter comes in at 7 pounds, 15.4 ounces. Not surprisingly, the next heaviest lens is the 800mm on the far left. It comes in at 5 pounds, 14.6 ounces. Next heaviest is the 500mm, which is second from the right. With the FTZ adapter mounted on that lens, it comes in at 3 pounds, 11.2 ounces. Okay, this is a little bit of a surprise. The next heaviest lens is going to be the 70 to 200 millimeter 2.8 S lens. It comes in at 3 pounds, 3.6 ounces. The lightest lens of the bunch is the 400 millimeter in the middle. It comes in at 3 pounds, 0.2 of an ounce. Okay, comparing the 404.5 to the 200 to 400 F4 is really kind of an apples and oranges comparison. They're very, very different lenses. Whereas the 200 to 400 gives you the ability to zoom, it weighs over twice as much. And so if you like a lens for walking around and you're not going to need to zoom back a little bit, then it's kind of a no-brainer to me. The 404.5 is the choice hands down. Plus you don't need an FTZ adapter. Now when you start talking about the 404.5 versus the 500 5.6 PF, this is a much closer comparison. And it does sort of make you wonder why Nikon did not make a 500 millimeter. But Nikon has always had an affinity for the 400 millimeter focal length, and I think that that's what we're seeing now. Also, you can make the argument that if you already own the 800 millimeter, a 500 millimeter is a little too close. Whereas this way, if you have, say, a 70 to 200, then you have a 400, then you have an 800, you've got your focal lengths covered with some pretty even spacing. So I'm second guessing Nikon, but I'm I think that's why they made that decision. So let's talk about the two lenses. They're very comparable in focal length. The 500mm giving about 25% more reach than the 400mm, but the 400mm has 2/3 of a stop more light capability. And that 2/3 of a stop can make a difference. In my shooting with the 400-4.5 wide open and the 500-5.6 wide open, I find my images between the two are very similar. Now I'll have to crop a little bit more with the 400-4.5, but I have to shoot a higher ISO with the 500-5.6. And I think it's pretty much a wash. And honestly, given the software that's around today for reducing noise and increasing sharpness on images, I like having the lighter, smaller lens and not having to fool with an FTZ adapter. So I'm really liking the 400-4.5, and it definitely, for me, takes the place of the 500mm. A couple more things in the 400mm's favor is we have the same, we have the same memory set functionality. It's a lot simpler and more straightforward on the S lenses, I believe, than it was on the AFS lenses. We have the auto manual switch and the focus limiter switch, which are present on the 500mm. I never used the other two switches on the 500mm, or I should say rarely. But the things the 400-4.5 has that the 500 lacks is a function button and a command dial. And those are really nice to have on the Z camera, especially the command dial. I've set that for exposure compensation, and it's really nice to, without moving my fingers or on the camera, to be able to dial in the exposure as I'm composing without having to fumble around for switches. So for me, it's kind of a no-brainer, and I'm going to be keeping the case that the 500 came in, but I'm going to keep the 400. Yesterday was the first chance I had to get out and shoot some photos with the 400mm, and like I say, I'm really impressed with it. I'm going to share some of those photos with you on the end of the video. If you like this video and found it helpful in any way, please like and subscribe. Thank you.